Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're literally stepping into the arena of the human soul to explore two massive, colliding forces that have shaped our entire history. We're talking about justice and revenge. Through the lens of evolutionary science, the way our societies are structured, and even cinematic masterpieces like Ridley Scott's Gladiator, we're going to completely untangle these dual forces. Let's find out who we truly are when we've been wronged. So, I want you to think about this. Is the desire for revenge a disease? Or is it actually a cure? Because for centuries, philosophers, theologians, and even modern psychologists have treated our thirst for vengeance as a sickness. Like it's a psychological dysfunction or some trauma response that just needs to be completely eradicated. But what if it's not a disease at all? What if our darkest, most intense instincts are actually a brilliant evolutionary adaptation, like a primal defense mechanism hardwired into our brains to keep us and our loved ones safe in a really dangerous world?
Before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig two graves. It's an incredibly chilling proverb, right? And it perfectly establishes the fatal stakes of retributive cycles. Deep down, we know instinctively that vengeance destroys the avenger just as surely as it destroys the target. But to truly understand why we are so incredibly willing to dig that second grave for ourselves just to see our enemies fall, we have to look past the poetry and dig right into the actual science behind why we do what we do. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the instinct of revenge.
Why does it feel almost magnetic to strike back when someone wrongs you? Well, to understand this, we need to look at what evolutionary biologists call welfare trade-off ratios, or WTR. Think about the last time someone, say, took credit for your work or deeply betrayed your trust. That intense anger you felt? It isn't a disorder. It's a highly calibrated biological system. It's basically this subconscious internal calculation our brains are constantly making to determine acceptable harm-to-benefit outcomes. Biologists argue that when someone wrongs you, your brain updates this ratio. It literally screams that a cost has to be imposed on the aggressor, so they, and honestly everyone else watching, learn to never ever exploit you again. And this sets up a literal biological battlefield right inside our own minds. We're talking hot revenge versus cool forgiveness. See, revenge is a hot instinct. It's driven by the amygdala, which is the brain's threat center. It's that immediate, burning, emotional urge you get to just reduce the psychological pain of inequality by bringing the other person down. On the flip side, forgiveness is a cool, highly rational process. It requires massive, exhausting effort from your prefrontal cortex to restrain those vengeful impulses. We only do this incredibly hard cognitive work to preserve social relationships that might benefit us in the long run. Now, this biological urge for balance brings us to one of the oldest legal and moral codes in all of human history. A life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And what's absolutely fascinating here is that, back in ancient times, this wasn't just unspeakable brutality. It actually had a vital social purpose. Proportional revenge was designed to definitively close the exchange of violence. Once the eye was taken, the debt was paid, peace was restored, and that prevented these runaway endless blood feuds that could literally wipe out entire clans.
Moving right along to Section 2, vengeance versus justice.
So as our societies grew larger and way more complex, we had to build systems to override those hot emotional instincts on a massive scale. And this draws a crystal clear battle line between two concepts that people confuse all the time. Vengeance is entirely subjective. It is deeply emotional and driven by a totally personal agenda. It stems from your individual feeling of being wronged and wanting to see the transgressor suffer. Justice, on the other hand, is designed to be everything vengeance is not. It is objective, it's unemotional, and it operates impartially based on fairness, facts, and established societal rules. It is totally detached from the victim's anger. But you might be wondering, why do both of these forces demand such an intense response from us? It all comes down to the symbolic implications of transgressions. When someone commits an offense, it's never just about the physical or material harm. It threatens our status and power. It disempowers and degrades the victim. And on a broader societal level, a crime actually violates our shared community values. Every transgression forces a response to somehow undo this moral and symbolic damage. The real question for society is, how exactly are we going to respond?
Which brings us to Section 3, retribution or restoration.
When conflict happens, we find ourselves at this really profound crossroads. On one path, we have retributive justice. This is the unilateral imposition of punishment. Its main goal is just desert and proportionate suffering, and its focus is almost entirely on restoring the status and power balance that the offender disrupted. But then, on the other path, we have restorative justice. This is a bilateral process of deliberation. It actually involves both the victim and the offender coming together. Its goal is rebuilding the moral and social selves of everyone involved, focusing heavily on reaffirming a shared value consensus. So we're looking at the profound choice between punishing an offender to restore power or healing a community to restore shared values. As the renowned criminologist Niels Christie once pointed out, when we just let the courts handle things purely as rule-breaking, the big loser is us, to the extent that society is us. It creates a huge loss of norm clarification. If we emphasize offenses merely as cold violations of the law, rather than deeply human conflicts, it actually robs society of a crucial opportunity. It robs us of the chance to interact, to heal, and to clarify the very moral norms that bind us together as human beings in the first place. Let's look at how this plays out in storytelling in Section 4, the tragic hero's choice. Whether we're talking about Maximus Decimus Meridius in Gladiator or Shakespeare's Hamlet, the psychological journey always follows this incredibly universal tragic arc. Act 1 is the departure. It's a dramatic, crushing fall from power into total vulnerability due to a horrific betrayal. Act 2 is the initiation. The hero has to navigate a dangerous new world, and they become entirely consumed by that hot desire for vengeance to restore order. And finally, Act 3 is the return. The hero achieves their form of justice, but because they chose that all-consuming path of vengeance, it only comes through their ultimate sacrificial death. And filmmakers use these incredible visual metaphors to contrast the two paths. Think about the Colosseum in Gladiator. It is the absolute spectacle of power. It perfectly represents autocratic ambition, raw violence, and the brutal public reality of retributive justice. Now contrast that with the golden, ethereal imagery of the Elysium wheat fields that Maximus dreams of. That represents the promise of peace, pure ideals, and the cool, restorative warmth of family. The tragic hero is constantly torn between the bloody sand of vengeance and the peaceful wheat of restoration. But the real pivot point in these stories always comes down to reclaiming identity. A hero has to reclaim their name and their mission before the ultimate confrontation. Think of that unforgettable cinematic moment when Maximus takes off his helmet and reveals his true name to the corrupt Emperor Commodus. It's a moment of pure power and profound recognition. But tragically, it also seals his fatal fate. By locking into this quest for personal vengeance, rather than stepping back to pursue systemic justice, the hero's doom is practically written in stone. Okay, finally, Section 5, Beyond the Arena. So what does this all mean for us today? Well, while revenge feels like a completely natural fairness instinct, that quick, hot burst of action from our amygdala just trying to reduce immediate psychological pain, it is actually a trap. In the real world, revenge just escalates conflict. It dramatically reduces the social and emotional payoffs for everyone involved. And ultimately, as psychological research has proven time and time again, vengeance hurts the seeker just as much as the victim. Because the profound truth is this. True justice requires the harder, yet infinitely more rewarding path of forgiveness and value restoration. The science tells us it takes immense, draining cognitive effort to override our emotional brains. It takes incredible strength to choose the cool, rational path of healing and restorative justice over the hot, destructive cycle of vengeance. It is definitely not easy, but it is literally the only way to actually repair our communities. Which brings us right back to where we started, but now, hopefully, armed with a powerful new choice. When you are wronged, will you dig 2 graves just to restore your power, or will you build a bridge to restore our shared values? It's the ultimate test of human nature, a daily battle between the Colosseum and the Elysium fields happening right inside our own minds. Ask yourself which path you're going to choose. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.